Okay, mu'mineen, mu'minaat, we'll get started in 1 second. Just trying to get the view set up properly. Okay, I think that'll help. Okay. Okay, I think let's begin, inshallah. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم. مؤمنين مؤمنات Sheikh Saleem Bhimji, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah, thank you everybody, especially to Sheikh Saleem for the tawfiq and the ability to have another chai chat session. Our topic tonight will be about the Quran, specifically in this Ramadan, going from ritual to spiritual. Well, at least we'll figure out what that means, inshallah. As usual, we have Slido available. So I'll be watching that. You can go to slido.com and use the code HICORL and type in any questions that you have. And I see that, I think there are already 2 available, but we'll get to that a little bit later. We have a poll that's up right now. So anybody who's interested, please join in now, participate in the poll. And then if you have questions, you can ask as well. And then Sheikh and I will come back to this poll a little bit later on and we'll discuss that. Okay. I don't know why I can't get both of the videos on the screen for some reason. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I'm screen sharing. Sheikh, how good are you with this stuff? I don't know what's going on. Because I think on the YouTube, it's only showing up one video with shared screen.
Well, yeah, I've never streamed from Zoom onto YouTube actually, so not fully tech savvy yet.
Not yet. Okay, inshallah. Although we'll get to that. Okay, so as again, you can jump on and vote in this poll, and then we'll come back to this, inshallah. Okay. So I want to start off first by just introducing Sheikh Saleem. Now, I think most of you do know Sheikh. And, we always say, he needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. So it's kind of useless for me to say that. I mean, there's a lot to read from his bio, right? He's done, alhamdulillah, a lot of work. He grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. After completing his post-secondary education at the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, he and his wife, sister Arifa Huda, moved to Medina, New York. They studied at the Imam al-Asr Islamic Seminary. This is the same one where I believe Sheikh Jafar Muhibbullah, Mulana Beg, and a few others had attended there, right?
That's right. Yeah. Sheikh Osama Abdul Ghani is from there. Quite a few of the brothers that are active in America right now. Yeah.
Okay, mashallah, awesome. I had no idea. I mean, when I saw this, I had no idea that you actually came to, or I said Medina. It's Medina technically, but
Yeah.
Okay. So then after this, then Sheikh had and his wife had shifted to Qom. They continued their studies there in the Hawza in Qom. Then he came back to Canada in 2000. He's worked with a lot of different organizations. One, the Islamic Humanitarian Service, which is a nonprofit Muslim charity in Kitchener, Ontario. He was there for 3 years working with them. He's worked with the World Federation, and I'm sure many of you who follow World Federation's work, you've seen all the stuff that he's involved with in terms of publications, online media, everything. I think most of you probably would recognize, most of the books on our shelves are going to have Sheikh Saleem's names on there, right? Either it's his own work, alhamdulillah, or he's translated a great alim's work, right? And the 2 institutes or publishing facilities that he's been involved with are the first, I always knew it as Al-Mubin, but I guess the full name is Al-Fath Al-Mubin Publications, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. but I mean, we're lazy, so we have to just say Al-Mubin, right?
Yeah.
And then, and then he is also now involved with Islamic Publishing House. And we'll talk a little bit more about the publishing stuff a little bit later too. So I'm sure most of you have also seen all these videos that, I mean, I have no idea how he's pumping out these videos constantly, but he has close to 500 videos to date, right? And I'm sure we'll see many, many more. He's served various communities in Canada. He lectures all over the place. But I think his main work has been in Canada. And at present, he's the spiritual advisor for the Az-Zahra Islamic Center in Richmond. Yeah, and I mean, again, most of you know he's been involved in online media, print media. Alhamdulillah, it's one of the things that people always talk about is how much we need this sort of work in the Shia community, right? Everybody else, they get all these, translated books and firsthand written books. Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Saleem is one, if not one of the only few out there who's been working on these initiatives to get quality material, like translated properly, not with, broken English, proper English translated material. He knows exactly what I mean by that comment. Getting quality material out there and, stuff that's beneficial for the ummah that we need to work on, inshallah. Okay, so first we have to start off. Sheikh, again, thank you for taking the time to join us today. How's everything going? I mean, you guys have just moved into another lockdown, right?
Yeah, so I'm out here in Ontario. We're just about an hour west of Toronto. So our lockdown started a few days ago. So basically, school is off right now. Kids are on break. But in terms of life, that means that the only thing you can go to the mall or the stores for is absolute necessities like food. Pretty much everything else is closed. I mean, restaurants are open for takeout and delivery. So we're kind of a self-imposed exile, I guess, inside of our house, inside of our homes right now. So it's good though, alhamdulillah. I mean, as much as difficult it is, obviously for all of us around the world having to go through this whole, pandemic for the last year, but I think it's hopefully taught a lot. It's taught us a lot about resiliency, about patience, and to really appreciate, when we had freedoms back in the day. We could actually go out and, pray in the mosque. We could go shopping. We could go and have, community gatherings. I think a lot of times we took a lot of those things for granted. And I think this 1 year has really shown us that never take anything that you get from Allah for granted, right? It's because blessings can be taken away instantaneously in the way that Allah works, really.
Hasan. So on that note of great blessings, so what are you drinking for the virtual chai chat?
So my beloved daughter, she actually made me some Moroccan mint tea tonight.
Very fancy, very nice, very bougie.
Yeah, it's really good, man. It's I've never been to Morocco, but mint. I mean, mint is mint, right? It's a beautiful herb, and making it as a tea is just it hits the spot. It's good.
So I had to ask that because when we were doing our sound check, Sheikh Saleem saw this sitting in my hand and he was like, what exactly is going on there? Is that chai or a smoothie, right? He was joking that, this is a virtual chai chat. So it is. So I brewed chai, like proper, tea. And then I added, so there's Dutch processed cocoa, half a teaspoon. There's black cocoa, half a teaspoon of that. And those who know black cocoa know, but if anything you want Oreo flavored, you add in black cocoa. I found that out from one of these Instagram nutritionists and recipe people that I follow. Then it's got coconut milk, almond milk, a little bit of heavy cream. And then, everybody who knows me knows that I've been doing keto for a while. So no sugar. It's only got monk fruit and stevia, both of them pure. So it's a chai smoothie, I guess, is the best thing you can probably call it. I think that's what I told you before, right?
Yeah. It's kind of cheating though, because the chai seems like a very small percentage of what you're holding there. It's more everything else.
Look, it's one brewed tea bag, right? I mean, normally I'll do two if I really needed to, but it's late at night. I don't want to stay up that late. Just enough to have energy to speak with you. Not that you need it, but I need it because it's been a long day. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, it's there. I mean, there's half a teaspoon, all the other stuff. It works itself out. I mean, I don't know. I like my chai, but I think I told you before too. Like I'm a doodh patti person. So I don't know. I prefer the non-chai flavor. I want a hint of it there, but especially now since I found out about this black cocoa, I've been adding it in everything. So all my coffees, all my smoothies, everything is getting at least at least a teaspoon, if not more. And it just everything tastes like Oreos. Like, and I mean, it's healthy as well. I mean, I don't want to get into that. That's for another chai chat we can do inshallah another time, right?
Sounds good.
Okay, so let me see if anybody has posted up if we've got any answers for the poll so far. So I think a few people have responded. So yeah, we'll wait for a few more to respond. Inshallah, yeah. Okay, wait over there. All right. So now you're a student of the seminary as well. So you know that when anybody chooses the seminary, especially if they decide to go to Qom, there's a wide range of topics that they can choose. You know, when they just want to specialize in something or, you know, spend their time researching. And, you know, a lot of people will end up going with, especially nowadays, maybe something in the naqliyat, right? The transmitted sciences, so hadith sciences or history, something like that. You'll have a lot of people obviously going to the aqliyat, the intellectual sciences, as they're called. So, you know, focusing on philosophy, metaphysics, maybe irfan or logic epistemology, you know, stuff like that. That's what I, you know, tended to do. You have some going off on, you know, other branches like, you know, one of our shuyukh has focused on parenting, tarbiyah, family counseling, things like that. Mm-hmm. It's very rare actually where we have, you know, those two main subjects, which are Quran and Hadith, which seem to be like our, you know, our Quranic thing, thaqalain, right? Like every Shia seems to be, you know, Quran, Hadith. Everybody should be studying that. And obviously, you know that, but most people don't really, I think, understand what goes on in the hawza, you know, the system, the barname, right? The schedule that we have. And that most people really don't get much information about Quranic studies nor Hadith studies. Now, you are somebody, and I think it actually would be rare. I don't know if it's an exaggeration, but I knowing enough people, I think you would say the same, maybe, that there's very few who have actually spent time researching the Quranic sciences and actually working on it and trying to impart that knowledge to the general public. And, you know, it's clear that it's something that people are interested in. So I wanted to ask a personal question, if you don't mind. What exactly made you pick the Quranic sciences over other disciplines?
Yeah, so I think for me, I guess coming from my background, right? I mean, I was born into a Shia family. I grew up in Edmonton, as you mentioned, a very small city. So, I mean, our community was very small, very tight knit. We didn't have a continuous process of having a resident alim in our community. So this is, I'm talking about, you know, I was born in 1972. So obviously, you know, my parents, you know, they came to Canada in the early 1970s, where there were probably maybe one or two families in Edmonton where I grew up. So our community was very small, very little contact with scholars because it was being a small city out in Western Canada. We didn't have a lot of scholars that would travel all the way out there. So we didn't have the best of Islamic knowledge, I would say. What we had was whatever we had. And one of the really the benefits, I think, that got me down this journey, I would say, is the fact that we had a great library in our center at that time in Edmonton. And it's still there, alhamdulillah. And we had, maybe, this is going back to the mid 80s, maybe over 600 to 1,000 books in English, right? Wow. And you can imagine in the 80s, that's very hard to believe, but, you know, we had, I mean, that was right at the time of the revolution in Iran. So you had Ansariyan coming out with books. You had the World Organization for Islamic Studies in Tehran. You had Pir Muhammad Ibrahim Trust from Karachi. You had Islamic Seminary publications from Karachi. And so I began just looking, you know, just reading as much as I could to gain more knowledge on my own. And I got to a point, obviously, which is when I left there to go to Hausa, that, you know, I realized there wasn't enough in English. And so I think it was really when I went to Qom, you know, you know, we always make du'as to Allah. We ask Allah for things. And a lot of times we ask for things and we think that it'll be an instantaneous response from Allah. You know, I make dua, it'll be answered like, you know, like it does in Hollywood movies kind of a thing, right? And one of the du'as I recall, just vaguely recall making, is asking Allah for the tawfiq to be able to render Quranic sciences books in Persian or Arabic into English. And I made the dua, and, you know, and I probably forgot about the dua. And then many years later, I was finally graced with an opportunity by an organization to actually start translating works of the Quran into English, tafasir of the Quran, commentaries of the Quran into English. So really, it was my own kind of greed, I guess, because of the fact that when I was growing up, I found that we didn't have enough resources. that I wanted to make sure that I could benefit from the books in the original language, but I wanted to kind of make sure that the next generation don't feel that there is nothing available for them on the Quran in a language that they could understand.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's, your background story is like, the type that you find in the books of like the great ulama in the past. Like, I had this dream and I went to Qom, I made this dua and I grabbed the dhari of the haram and I cried. Like, wow, you should add that to your bio so that people recite those things. I have to start making tawassul through you now. It's interesting though. So most of the other ulama that I've talked to, I think I could probably say almost everyone without fail, the subjects that they've decided to study and the things that they want to speak about when they go for tabligh or work on in terms of research, whatever it is, there ends up being a very, I'm going to use the word selfish, but in a kind of semi-positive way, or I could probably say more like subjective, experiential sort of thing that's informed what they wanted to study. For example, a lot of people who, let's say, they just, because of historical controversies or inaccuracies or questions, they said, I was so confused about the history. That's why I wanted to really go and specialize there and, look at the history, especially, Sunni Shia polemics maybe, or something like that. They end up focusing on that. And they said, now I want to translate X book or, go publish this and speak about this wherever I go. Even for me personally, like most people know this, who know me, it was usually for me, the more rational issues, right? Like, atheism and modernism, postmodernism, all these issues in metaphysics and philosophy that really, confused me when I was younger, and there were same thing. There's no resources there. I had asked all I'm using the word ulama loosely. It was zakirin, right? In our center growing up. But, they tried, and whatever speakers had come, they had tried. I asked them, where did God come from? Who made God? Typical things like that. And there really wasn't information, and nobody studied enough to really handle that. So a lot of that, I guess, it seems like, it informed my decisions to pursue, specifically the intellectual sciences, the aqliyat. And a lot of what I love to discuss, in private sessions and public gatherings, on the member, off the member, even if, inshallah, I get the chance to publish, I don't want to say more things because I don't think I have anything published at this point. I don't know if random translations on, Iqra Online count, but, things like that have to, are pushed from that aspect. And like I said, most of the other friends that I've talked to all seem, and they have that same sort of thing. Some who are so focused on hadith studies, and something about that piqued their interest, and they saw that there was a lack of information. So they really went and, kind of grabbed that. It just kind of shows how Allah really does grab various individuals from these communities who have their fitrah is pointing them to different directions, which I think everybody can kind of see how that's important, right? Because I'm sure there's many individuals just like yourself in communities who really want to build a relationship with the Quran. And like you said, the resources are, alhamdulillah, even if they are available, there may be a lot of different issues here and there. Without mentioning names, and I think you'll probably understand, even a lot of the works that are done right now, call them like modern works, contemporary translations, there are like very severe and detrimental and sometimes laughable translation and errors in them. And, this is one of the issues that we used to talk about in Qom too, of, thinking about translation works and publication works and, explaining things back to people at home that, it's not an issue about pride or anything like that, that look, it makes sense for people whose first language is English to really either write in their own language, if we can do it, right? Like firsthand work, which alhamdulillah, I know you've done that. Or at the very least, let us translate works that we know are relevant to people back home, or we know the proper cultural language to use to give the right examples, and to know that, look, maybe, like this Gule Ziba example, whatever, maybe won't work so well when we go back to people, but maybe we can, offer something different. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, let me go back to the Quran to kind of further elaborate. When we read the Quran, there's a constant theme of Allah saying that every time we sent a messenger, it was from amongst their own people. Look at Surah Al-Jummah, right? هُوَ الَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولًا مِنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ. It was from the people of Mecca that Rasulullah came. He wasn't from China who came in as a guest speaker to the Hijaz, right? Nabi Ibrahim, he was sent to his community. It wasn't like he was going to, the indigenous people of Americas, right? And that shows me, at least it shows me in my understanding, that in order for an alim or scholar, a muballigh, a zakir to really be effective and to be able to have their finger on the pulse of the community and to solve their problems, or at least listen to their problems, they have to be from their community, And
Awesome.
when I mean that, I mean even like maybe not necessarily the ethnic. Like for example, I don't necessarily say a Khoja can only understand a Khoja or a Pakistani only a Pakistani, but to an extent, I feel that too, because I mean the Khojas, we have some our own idiosyncrasies. We do things in a certain way that people from let's say Khojas from East Africa, they do things in a certain way that Khojas from Pakistan might not do, right? Pakistan being a massive nation or India being a massive community of Shias, I'm sure you have Shias from a particular part of India or Pakistan where other Shias from the same country, they won't do things in the same way, whether it's azadari, whether it's waladats, whether it's food that's served in a program. And carrying that over into like literature, like let's say writing works or translating works, is that again, just because a person speaks English, it doesn't necessarily mean they can be effective in an English-speaking country. I remember when I went to England, this is about 5 years ago, from Muharram to one of the centers in the UK. And I'm speaking with my Canadian English like I'm speaking to you right now. And I'm speaking in the UK to people who are British English speaking. And I had people tell me, we don't understand what you're saying because your English doesn't flow with us, right? And I have a different accent, or I'd say they have a different accent than I do,
And as a Canadian, you must have responded, sorry, obviously.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, sorry, eh? So I think that we have to really keep that in mind. Is that, and if the person, I think the scholar, muballigh, they have to be from that community to know them. You have to develop the get all the sciences, get all the tools you need in the seminary, whether that's in Qom or Najaf or wherever that respected seminary is. But I think every community needs to send their own people from their city, even, or their state or their province. And then they have to go back to their community because they're going to know the English of that community. They're going to know the culture, what the needs are. It was great back in the 60s and 70s and 80s when we didn't have students from the West going to the seminary. We had to import our ulama just as we import our masalas and our chai and things. But I think we're getting to a stage now, 2021, right? I think we're mature enough as a Shia community in North America that we don't import our scholars anymore. Let them stay in, they can come here. I mean, they have a platform because you have people who still speak Urdu or Arabic or Farsi or Gujarati for that matter. And they need services in their language for that older generation. But I think in order to move Islam and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam forward in North America, I think really we need to, reinvestigate what we've done. And again, I think kind of gone off on a tangent. But I think when you coming back to the Quran and writing and translation for our audience, I think that's a need, is that people from here have to be doing that work rather than outsourcing it to a foreign country.
You do know that I'm a American-born Pakistani working with a Khoja community, right? So you're taking shots at me.
We'll give you honorary citizenship as a Khoja. How about that?
I appreciate it. We can talk about the benefits that come with that later.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump to I think we got some responses on the poll. So let me open that up. Let's see what people have responded.
Sure.
Okay, so the question that we had posed was, okay, so we're asking, what will your relationship with the Quran look like this Ramadan? So it looks like the majority are going to focus on understanding instead of completion. Now, obviously, we know that there's all these narrations that say, finish the Quran and finish it multiple times, rewards, things like that. At the same time, we, especially more recently, I would say, I don't know how recent it's been, but very recently now, they've been saying, look, focus on understanding and contemplate on the verses. Don't rush to finish it and things like that. It's interesting how this is broken down. We still have, so you can see, we still have a few individuals saying, that they want to at least try to finish the Quran in Arabic at least once. And then you'll have some even trying to finish the Quran in English once. I mean, when these issues, I don't want to say took place, but, when I was younger, I heard, a lot of different explanations. I mean, pretty much the two extremes. One extreme was, look, just finish the Quran. That's what's written in the narrations. Let's finish the Quran in Arabic, right? It doesn't say, finish the Quran. Look, any other month, fine. But this is the month of ibadah. Reading the Quran in Arabic is ibadah. You need to do that. Then we started to have these, once the English speaker trend kind of took off, especially in the, let's say, late 90s, early 2000s. So you had, get a lot of these, that's when like the celebrity speaker trend pretty much started. So a lot of them, and I kind of, I don't want to say vividly, but I remembered, I think, enough, where somebody pretty much said, just toss that idea out. It's about understanding. So they were even advocating for the fact that, forget this Arabic recitation, just go straight to the English, right? So that way you can understand it. And, so for me, like now that I'm thinking about all these different advices that people may be hearing in the community, I think it's, although it might be obvious, I think a lot of people are like, look, it's obvious. We want to be spiritual. We should be connecting. But then it can also be confusing too, that look, it's saying to finish the Quran. Why would you want to go against something that's very clearly, as we say, the prima facie meaning and understanding of what's written in the hadith, like finish the Quran. So let's, if with your permission, let's open that up and then talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, good point. And I think that's where I think even the subject of our talk tonight is from ritual to spiritual, engaging with the Quran in Ramadan, right? Ritual, and I think both. I feel personally that both are very important. The ritualistic aspect, right? Ritual being a set of actions that a person does in a set format or a set routine. I think ritual is important. Ritual gives us sort of some semblance of having like a normalcy in life or some order and an order in our life. So ritual is important. So, I mean, I don't think anybody can ever say, don't read the Arabic Quran, just focus on translation. I think that's definitely a problematic approach. I think we need to maintain the meaning of those ahadith, right? If we take them at face value, just the literal, read the Quran, one recitation of one verse is equal to, in the month of Ramadan, is equal to reciting the entire Quran any other time of the year. So I think we need to stick to that as well as as an individual, as a family, as a community, to read the Quran in Arabic, even if we don't understand a word of it, right? I think that's important to realize, because I agree with you, I concur that, that there are times where we've had the speakers, the zakirin, these, celebrity scholars for dollars, whatever you call them, they take us down a path which is an extreme, right? We can become extremists. Oh, it's only, Dua Kumail only in Arabic, Quran only in Arabic. And then you have the other ones who come and say, no, we have to understand everything that we're doing. Now, I agree with the understanding part, and I agree with the Arabic part, right? But I think we have to somehow morph the two together, have a hybrid model, right?
Awesome.
Where Arabic is maintained. And I mean, unfortunately, as a community, Khoja, Pakistanis, Canadians, Muslims in North America, we don't give enough importance to learning the Arabic. I think that's problematic. If we had a madrasa class, if we had people in our communities to teach us Quranic Arabic, the Arabic of the du'as, then we would really feel the flavor of the Quran or the du'as when we read the Arabic. But we're not at that level yet. But I think we need to maintain the Arabic to an extent. But at the same time, we don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I think we need to balance it. If that means that every day I only have a half an hour a day because of work and other challenges, maybe I take 15 minutes to read Arabic, and then right after that, I read 15 minutes of the English or 2 pages of a commentary, right? And I try to complement the both. Okay, fine, I might not get the full thawab in Ramadan, but at the end of the day, I would ask myself that, am I only reading Quran for the thawab factor? Is it just the rewards? I mean, I've never seen a hadith, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never seen a hadith that says if you read the Quran in translation and understanding, you get 0 reward, Because if the Quran is meant to change the heart, and the Quran is meant to also implement the rules that we learn, the teachings of the Quran, obviously not that we become mujtahids, but we learn the ethics, the morality, the theology of the Quran, and that makes me a changed person to be better, then I wonder if that's not better than just reading Arabic with no understanding, right? But I think we have to make a balance between the ritualistic aspect of Quran reciting in Ramadan, and in the spiritual, where we actually want to change ourselves, and that change can only come if I understand what I'm saying.
Awesome. No, you raised some really interesting and valid points. It does seem like a lot of the time, I guess, because we're hearing information from all different sides, if we don't have a good focus on what we're actually after, right, with Islam as being Muslims, like trying to increase our iman, get closer to Allah, perfect our souls, right, get closer to the Ahlul Bayt. We have these maybe some vague understanding, But when it comes down to actually practically applying, okay, well, what actually will get me to that? Now, if it's something, if you're, again, like I was put it as like acha bacha points, right? Like if you're just looking for the points and you just want to cash in your, your tickets and get your prize in Jannah, then okay, yeah, you can go by these little things, just recite all this stuff, again, even the word ritual has become problematized over years, but doing something ritualistically is very good in terms of a disciplinary action for the soul, as you mentioned. So, I think people have been, tossing that aside a bit too much when, we should really maybe put more emphasis on that. And it's not just about collecting the points, but that ritual itself is going to be, inshallah, providing the tawfiq and that sort of energy that the soul needs to be able to engage in other actions, right? And then to be able to balance that out by, okay, yeah, spending some time reflecting on maybe parts of maybe the Arabic that I did, or as you were saying, like split it 15 minutes. I don't think for people, especially in Ramadan, when they're trying their best to set aside some extra time, which I think everybody tries to do, the ones who are, trying to make the most out of the month of Ramadan, like, okay, if you've already gotten an hour or half an hour or whatever, even 15 minutes, you've already set aside specific time to do something for your soul in the holy month, which I think becomes very easy, right? Because as they say, shaitan is locked up in Guantanamo. So it's easy, to do that now. So when you do that, okay, well, now I think it's very simple, but very practical advice. Like, look, just split that in half. You can keep a part of it, which is ritualistic or robotic, whatever word you want to use. Just get that as training for the soul, and again, I mean, I think maybe it's a problem for many ulama who haven't really talked about the benefit of just, Arabic recitation itself, proper tajweed, that beautiful feeling that you get. I mean, I'll be honest, when I hear a lot of people now, they're even into reciting like the translations of du'as, like the taqibat of salat and dua komeo in English. Like you can find YouTube videos. For me, it just doesn't have the same feeling. Even English musiba, right? Gham and masaib. I mean, I don't know if you recite in English, but so I can only really do English. And even when I do it, I always prefer to hear it in Urdu or Farsi or Arabic. For me, just these Eastern languages, especially, Arabic itself, right? Being this, according to everybody's, position, some would say that this isn't itself a divine language, right? There's specific spiritual qualities to it that we can't just toss aside, haphazardly. And then, yes, at the same time, we have tafakkur and tadabbur and reflection and contemplation, or as some of our great ulama say, the Quran is the story of the human soul, the story of mankind. And we have to be able to look into the meanings here, the tafasir, the commentaries, even as some would advise, right? As long as it's guided, kind of personal inspiration and finding that guidance for your daily life and then allowing that to be a transformative factor. So I think it's a very practical thing that, I'll definitely try to do. And hopefully the viewers can do that as well in Ramadan, of trying to split it up between kind of, again, I don't like the word forced ibadah or ritual, but, just sticking to a plan in that sense, which maybe you don't have any deep contemplation, and then also having part of it devoted to contemplation. So I think that's a nice approach to it, Hasan. Shall we go to some of the questions? I think there's 4 up here right now.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, let me just share screen. Okay. Okay, so I think the first one, so this first, let me highlight this first one. Yeah. So I think this one has pretty much been addressed, but let me just read it anyway. So the person's asking, Quran curious, which has more rewards, completing the Quran in Arabic, completing in English, or reading very little in English, but with some tafsir? So, I mean, I believe you answered it. I don't know if you want to add anything else though.
Yeah, I think just, to sum it up, I mean, if we follow the hadith that we have, I mean, especially in the month of Ramadan, the Arabic recitation of the Quran is where the maximum reward is there. I mean, if you look at a numerical value, but then at the same time, the Quran tells us umpteen times, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Have people not reflected on the Quran, or are there locks upon their hearts? Allah says that we've sent the Quran down as a tadhkira, as a reminder. So I think, again, if we're going to stick to the strict text of the hadith, it's Arabic recitation. But then if you look at the ayat of the Quran, it's about reflection, contemplation, thinking about what's being read. Again, with the goal in mind to make a change in our lives. So, it's hard to really say. I mean, if it's quantity, we're looking for the reward. The numbers, again, I don't know. I don't think we can even safely say what has more reward with Allah. Yeah.
No, that's good. I mean, I understand the sort of hesitation, right? Because we know that there's obviously the personal element to it, right? Obviously, we have these general narrations which talk about all this reward, right? And not just in terms of reciting Quran in Ramadan, but just generally all the various narrations which talk about you get this much reward, right? Like this is, 1,000 Hajj or 1,000 Umrah. This is worth 1,000 years of prayers and all these things. And I mean, it's attractive in that sense, right? To just go after the points and do that. But at the same time, when we recognize that, look, Islam is really about helping us destroy the ego and trying to, get our souls to reach that perfection, that kamal, and learn from the examples of the Ahlul Bayt. Well, okay, well, maybe, for example, for certain individuals, maybe a little bit more of this might have more of an effect than something else, right? So I know it's tough to kind of give these generalized answers.
Yeah.
At the same time, we don't want to just put in everybody's hands like, do whatever you feel is best, right? It's good, I guess, if people have a local alim that they can turn to, say, look, this is what I've been experiencing, and they can go back and forth with them and kind of say, look, this is how I've had a relationship previously with the Quran. What do you advise I do now? And then maybe that alim can, advise something very particular for them.
Yeah. I think it's all about balance in life as well. Again, I know we all have 24 hours in a day. I mean, that can be extended through barakah, right? To the blessings of Allah. But I mean, I think with that 24 hours, if we dedicate, let's say, even in this Ramadan, even if we would dedicate an hour a day, I think we can balance between Arabic and translation. A third Arabic, 1/3 English, 1/3 commentary, for example, right? To come up with some formula that works. I think maybe we forget that hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salam, where he says that some people worship God like the slave master relationship, because you're scared of the fire. Some worship God because they're like businessmen, right? They're trading with God. I'll pray, you give me paradise. I'll fast, you give me this. And then he says the third group are those who worship God because they recognize that God deserves that worship. And that's the ibadatul ahrar, the free men, the free women, right? So I think if we even look at that kind of a hadith, that I turn to Allah and say, look, Allah, I don't care for the thawab. I'm doing it because I love you. And, again, the hadith with the thawab factor are there, but at the same time, I'm worshiping Allah. I'm reading the Quran because of the love I have for Allah, right? So it's not really a trading relationship of thawab versus, understanding.
Okay, let's go to the next one. This is one, I'm sure you probably get this a lot too. I've gotten this multiple times. What is the best English translation of the Quran? What do you think?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I've probably got about 8 or 10 translations in my library here at home. There's a website I usually use. I think it has about 15 or 17 English translations. And you can look at each one on the same screen, right? So every translation I've seen from Ali Qara'i's, one of the most recent translations, obviously from the Shia perspective, to people like Muhammad Shakir, who, according to some, was a plagiarized translation from the Qadianis, that he kind of changed a few things here and there, to Abdullah Yusuf Ali. There's another one I've been looking through recently called, I think his name is Muhammad Yunal. He's a Turkish translator. UNAL, his name is spelled. I found it to be quite balanced. He adds a lot of text in brackets, so explanatory comments for the translation. So I've been really enjoying that one because he explains all it. And obviously he's not coming from the perspective of the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So obviously, you take some of the things he says with a grain of salt, but he does a good job in rendering the Quran into an easier to understand work compared to like Yusuf Ali with the Old English style and other early translations. Even with Ali Qara'i, as great as his work is, I mean, I haven't seen the recent prints, but I know the earlier editions. I found them fraught with difficulties to understand. He used terminologies in English, which, I mean, today, if you were to read it, is quite offensive, in some examples. And I don't want to give the example because it's kind of a curse word in English. But he's used some words which are very archaic, and he probably had a reason why, but I mean, I ended up having to look up words in a dictionary, or actually, get in touch with him directly to ask him why did he translate a certain word in a certain way. And he ended up, providing me like a 20-page article he wrote on the meaning of that word. Wow. So yeah, there's still a lot. I think there's still a long way we can go as a community to produce a better translation. I've even seen the one from Sayyid Hussein Nasr, the study Quran.
Yeah.
It's a nicer approach and having the commentary, but again, there is obviously issues with that as well. Having the Shia and Sunni tafsir is nice for those who have the ability to recognize and want to kind of balance the two. But I mean, most people are just wanting to know what is the approach of the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt about alayhim assalam, about the Quran, right? So
Yeah. I mean, usually I end up by default mentioning to people Dr. Ali Quli Qara'i, right? Because, Shia, and it does seem like at times he's trying to, involve or embed Tafsir al-Mizan, right? In some kind of an explanatory way. But obviously, I'm just like any other translation, and I'm sure you would agree too that every translation ends up becoming a tafsir from the author in the first place, right? The translator.
yeah.
So now, and that's going to be an issue because somebody who studied in the seminary can have an understanding of somebody's background and why they would translate it, right? Especially because you can look at the Arabic and say, okay, I can see why they chose that, and then maybe respectfully disagree on that choice, especially if the choice is a word that's going to get you banned on Twitter or something like that, right? You maybe don't want to do that, but it's tough because somebody who really has that passion, you want to offer them something, right? You don't want to say, look, okay, nothing, just give them this.
Yeah.
People, that's what they don't like from me, is that I always end up saying, look, there's nothing good out there and we can't really do much. Nothing's perfect. They're like, oh, give us something. I said, okay,
yeah.
as long as with a grain of salt, you see that this is somebody's watered down tafsir that you're looking at, then okay, fine. If you're just quickly looking, trying to get like semi contemplation out of it, okay, fine. Then you can use X, Y, or Z. Look, if you have the time and you can look through, like you said, which website do you use, by the way, that has all these listed?
I don't recall the name of it, but I can send you the link if you want to share it later on with the audience.
Sure.
But yeah, it has 15 or 17 translations on screen. So
okay, yeah. The one that I've seen that again, I usually compare with, I think it's called Islam Awakened, if I'm not mistaken. Like that's the one I've seen that you can put up multiple. So at the top it has the Arabic. It'll also do the word by word, like literal translation, and then below it, it'll have a list of whichever you choose, or all these pretty much English translations, like a good amount of them as well. So that's usually the one I go to see. Okay, how are people kind of working with that? Like the two sources that I end up looking for, besides Islam Awakened, is I use the Quranic corpus as well, right? Corpus.quran.com, because that can be helpful as well sometimes too. But, yeah. No, it'd be nice though in the future if there's some sort of project that allows for somebody to help. There's something. We always ask for too much, but I've seen this for the Sunnis as well. They have these literal word by word Qurans that have all the words for people, to help them learn the Quranic Arabic, and then it also has commentaries, right? So everything's packed in there. And of course, the difference is they'll pay for it. Now, whether Shias will pay for stuff, that's another question, right, Sheikh?
Yeah. Just to let you know, on a little open secret is actually I'm working with the Kisa Foundation out of San Jose right now. And I'm working on a project called the Clear Guidance, which is going to be a multi-volume tafsir of the Quran from the Shia perspective. So it's being written in English from the ground up by myself. And basically what I'm doing is I'm taking Tafsir Namuna, the 5-volume summary, as my foundation. And then on top of that, I'm building with Tafsir Nur al-Sheikh Qaraati, Tafsir al-Mizan of Allama Tabatabai, and Tafsir of Ayatul Jawadi Amali Tasneem. So whenever I find that there is ambiguity in Namuna, I'm going to Tasneem or Al-Mizan and building up mostly Tasneem, because none of his work is in English. And I think he presents some kind of revolutionary, unique aspects of the Quran. It's a long-term project, about 5 to 8 years. Volume 1 should be coming out this summer, which would be Surah Fatiha, Al Imran, Baqarah, and Al Imran. And then hopefully another volume every 12 to 18 months. So about eight volumes for the entire Quran. And we're looking at, we're adding various aspects from science and various other angles to look at the verses. So inshallah, once this comes out, it'll hopefully be another small service to the Quran for the English-speaking community.
Wow, I'm sure many community members are really looking forward to that. So may Allah give you more tawfiq to finish that work and see it to completion, inshallah. Hasan, thank you so much for that. Okay, let's go to we have a couple other. So there's 2 comments that came. This one I like is really interesting, right? Even spiritual has ritual embedded in the word, right? It's a nice, cute comment.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yes.
Okay, I think that same person also mentioned the Al-Islam multilingual Quran project.
Correct.
Okay, so I know I'm vaguely familiar with it.
Yes.
But I haven't looked at it recently. So it does have, I think, does it show all of them on screen? I can't
Yeah,
remember now.
so the Al Islam Quran Project, it has the Arabic text, obviously, and then it has 3 translations. So it's got the Muhammad Shakir, Abdullah Yusuf Ali, and Muhammad Piqtal. And
Okay.
I think also have included the commentary from Aghapuya. So the Asbir Mir Ahmed Ali Aghapuya kind of collaboration, that's also a part of that project. The
Okay.
Al Islam Quran, yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We got 2 more on screen right now. So, okay. Does a person have to study in the seminary to pursue Quranic studies? So, I mean, that seems like it's an easy no, but is it such an easy no?
I mean, I think it's one of those yes and no questions, responses, right? It depends, I guess, at what level of Quranic studies you're talking about, right? Because I mean, if you think about it, the Quran was coming down to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Mecca and Medina. The Meccans are majority polytheists, right? They haven't studied in the Hausa, they haven't studied philosophy and logic and all of these, grammar and syntax. They haven't studied all of these sciences, but yet the Quran is speaking to them. So at one level, I mean, you don't have to be a seminarian. You don't have to have gone to the seminary to read and at least understand the Quran at a basic rudimentary level. Like I read the verse of the Quran where Allah says in Surah Al-Hujurat, as believers, you're not allowed to backbite one another, right? And women should not make fun of women. And when I read those kinds of verses, I don't need to be a PhD in Quranic sciences to grasp the concept, right? So at one level, if the Quran is speaking to the mushrikeen, the polytheists of Mecca, and getting them to think, then that tells me that today I don't need, a believer in our community or non-Muslim today should be able to pick up the Quran, read it in English, unfortunately, obviously, but get some basic understanding, right? But now to take that a level further where you want to kind of analyze a verse, as a lot of our scholars will do in the tafasir, they'll say, okay, this is the subject, this is the predicate, this is the past tense, this is command form, this verb is making effect over here. Obviously, to do an analysis, a grammatical analysis, and understand the verse in that way, this is not mentioned by Allah, but you should presume that this is what Allah meant. Obviously, those kinds of nuanced points, obviously that takes years of study, if not in the official seminary, I mean, on online seminaries, or if you have local scholars that are able to offer that level of depth of Quranic sciences. But I mean, we have a lot of good books in English translated by great scholars. I think the one of the books of the late Ayatollah Hadi Ma'rifat, may Allah raise his rank, on Ulum al-Quran and Quranic sciences is in English, 2 volumes, it's probably over 1,000 pages. But it really outlines the science of understanding the Quran in a great way. I myself also had translated a small book of about 100 pages from His Eminence Ayatollah Jafar Subhani. I think it's called An Introduction to the Science of Tafsir of the Quran, where he talks about the 14 or 15 prerequisites that somebody needs to understand Quran, to read it and go through it and make sense of the book, right? So I think at a basic level, we can all open the Quran and read it and understand it. Now, to get to the level where we want to write commentary or give our opinion on what a verse would mean, obviously that would take a lifetime really of studies for some people to make it to that level of actual, dissecting the verses of the Quran.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it goes back to I like how you use the sort of Quranic analogy in a sense, right? That the Quran itself is addressing people who are non-experts, even in the Arabic grammatical sense, right? I mean, the Quran is a mu'jiza. One of its great mu'jizat is its, Arabic eloquence and the way that, nothing can challenge it. And obviously, most of the Arabs had no idea. They weren't, experts in the language. So they had to look to the other experts to tell them that, whether or not this is actually from God or, something else. So, it's interesting to see that the Quran itself as an analogy on how to study the Quran, right? Just from that perspective. And, I know that there are a lot of people in communities who want to pursue further, and especially when it comes to, the Arabic part of it too. You're familiar with the TRS Academy and these courses that they've done, the Ilm al-Quran courses?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that's something that's becoming popularized recently as well. This was something that was only done in person by the instructors. It's because when I had first started in Qom, I think they were first working on these books. And so I had taken a class on, how to teach them. And, it was basically, that wasn't just a translation of that Mafahim book that everybody does, right? It was trying to reorganize it again for an English speaking audience and adjust some of the pedagogy behind it too. So I know a lot of individuals even in here in Orlando, they've taken the course because now it's being offered online. And, a lot of them have benefited from that because it seems to approach, understanding the Quran from, multi-level approach, where obviously you have parts of it, meaning the tafsir. You have, theological, philosophical, metaphysical points that are there. You get his history out of it, trying to create these relationships with, each ayah or each word, I guess, that's used. And then through that as well, they seem to be teaching individuals, either, finer points of Arabic grammar as well. And, people that I've talked to that have gone through all of the, 3 courses, they've really come out with like a completely different relationship. And I'm sure you remember too, when, I'm sure when we first started like Sarf and Nahu and things like that, going back to the Quran after that, it was almost, I don't know, for me, it was like a different book. Like I looked at the book, the Quran, something completely different, even if it was just just knowing a little bit more about Arabic. So, I remember vaguely somebody, maybe it was some alim who gave the analogy, right, of the Quran being like the sea, right? I can't remember who said this. Do you remember? And they're saying that, based on your skill set, somebody who just wants water, yeah, they can go to the Quran and they'll be able to, drink from the sea in that sense, right? Or somebody wants to wash their hands. But then you have deep sea divers who can go and find hidden treasure. So it all depends on how much you put in and what the skill sets are, all this. But the Quran as this ocean, this vast, infinite ocean, will always have something to offer. I don't remember. I can't remember where I read that though.
Yeah, I've read it a few times too. I don't recall who mentioned that quotation though. Yeah.
I think it's apt. Okay. We're getting some more questions in. So we have about 8 minutes left.
Sure.
Let's see. This one. Okay. Okay. How does one reflect on the ayat of Quran?
That's an important question. I think it's one that's I don't know if we have a quick answer for it, but it's definitely a key of the Quran, right? Because Allah, again, there's verses that clearly where Allah tells us, right? أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Do we not think about translating that word tadabbur as reflecting or thinking about the Quran? I think one of the things, there's probably, and I know I've seen books where scholars have talked about the multiple stages to get to doing actual tadabbur of the Quran, right? Because that's a kind of a maqam, it's a status to get to. Not tafsir, but tadabbur, just to reflect on it, because you may read a verse today and you can reflect on it, but then you may come across a verse a few weeks later in another surah which may seem to contradict what you just read a few weeks ago, right? And again, it may seem to contradict because we know there's no contradictions in the Quran. So I think one of the prerequisites is probably to have read at least the Quran cover to cover, right? In understanding and knowing the verses, because again, you may come across a verse that says one thing. Like you'll see, for example, Allah will say, "Laysa kamithlihi shay." There's nothing like him. But then you look a couple pages later, and Allah tells Nabi Nuh, build the ark under our eyes. And it's Isna al-fulki bi ayunina, right? Or Allah will say, for example, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim, Allah's hand is above theirs. But then you'll say, well, wait a minute. I did tadabbur on the verse where Allah said there's nothing like him, but now he's saying his hand is above their hand, or his shin will be shown on the day of judgment, or he's telling Prophet Nuh to build the ark and he's watching him. So I think when we look at reflection and that level of tadabbur on the Quran, we need to really, at first of all, we probably have to have a good understanding of Islamic theology, of our aqaid, of our basis of knowing Allah. And we also need to know, maybe at a high level, the methodology or the way that the Quran speaks, right? Because Allah uses words in the literal, He uses words in the metaphorical. And I think if you don't know those tools of language that Allah is using, then we may get lost in the whole reflection on the verses. So, right.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it too difficult for the questioner or the audience, but it's I think I mean, it's definitely a science that we haven't really explored that much in English. I know there are books in Farsi. I've seen quite a few on, the correct methodology of doing tadabbur and reflecting on the Quran. Maybe we need to have courses or classes that kind of further elaborate on what that methodology looks like, right? Just like anything, right? When we learn how to recite the Quran with tajweed, we have to learn the pronunciation, how the letters are pronounced. So maybe for tadabbur and how to reflect on the Quran, we probably have to develop a class where we can teach the necessary requisites that somebody will need to now reflect on the Quran. Let's say.
So I think the next question is probably a good segue into, because it's very related to the response that you had given. So we had sessions in our community where we have to open the Quran, and whatever verse our eyes fall on, we are told to reflect and try to say what it means and how it's telling us something about life, right? What is the Quran telling you? Are we qualified to come up with such interpretations, analyses? So it's interesting because this usually, I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, look, yeah, I do reflect on the Quran. I open it up and I see, the meaning that it gives me. And I remember, I don't know if, which of the teachers it was, but basically it may have been maybe when I wasn't a class on tadabbur or tafakkur or anything like that, but maybe have just come up in one of our sessions right in Qom. But I vaguely remember, and I'm probably going to be butchering my teacher's explanation, but they were saying that, look, if the information, because look, we all have this kind of stored information that we use from our day-to-day life, right? All that information, knowledge, info, facts, whatever it is. When we open the Quran, and I know that Allama Tabatabai does, rahmatullah alayh, does allude to this fact in the introduction of Al-Mizan. What most people do, sometimes even ulama, is that they take that information, they force feed it right back to the Quran, right? Rather than allowing the Quran tell them what to do, they tell the Quran what to do. So, and sometimes this can be a false sense of inspiration or a false sort of reflection. And what it really is, it could be the fact that the person, what they're really doing is saying, look, I'm having, certain difficulties in my life, or I'm going through something is on my mind right now. These verses or this ayat that I'm looking at, I'm reading, based on some subjective experience that I've had or something that I already believe, maybe subconsciously, probably, I'm going to feed back to the Quran, and it's going to give that I'm going to have it relay the information back to me, right? Almost like you're doing your own, Quranic istikhara kind of thing. And, it's interesting. I'm sure you've heard people say the same thing to you. I needed to know whether to, invest in Bitcoin or not, or something like that. And then, when I open the Quran, the verse, not the verse about Bitcoin, but the ayah about, investing and spending in the way of Allah. So, see, Allah was trying to tell me to invest. I mean, I hear a lot of times that this is the way that people are, engaging in reflection. So usually, I mean, what I've been taught, and, as far as I understand, the way that the Quran should be approached is that this is not tafakkur and tadabbur and how the Quran should be utilized. The way that our teachers had to explain it to us is that, look, there's, again, we have that limited scope that's, part of us that's, has some sort of knowledge, right? Nobody's completely empty. We have this space that's empty, and then we have a part of us that has some sort of knowledge that's there. When a person wants to reflect, they're trying to take that known and then use that to jump into the unknown, meaning that they have to recognize that, look, there's an unknown part. I don't have access to it. The Quran can help me get to that part. And usually it'll be, a teacher as well, whether it's directly through the Ahlul Bayt or, a spiritual guide, a Quranic teacher, whatever it is. They have to help along with that process as well. It's going to be almost impossible for somebody who, especially if they have that jahil, that ignorance, how are they going to be able to know something that they don't know it, right? It'll be very, very difficult for them to do that. But the Quran can act as an aid to help them through the knowns that they have, get to that unknown process. But so the teachers would say that, look, one of the prerequisites is that you have to have the humility to say, I don't know. And there's a huge, more of the space in my soul is unknowns rather than actual knowns. And this sort of process, again, with all due respect to people who may be engaging in this, seems to be a person just taking their knowns and it's using the Quran as a mirror to reflect back their own ideas. And I personally would highly caution people from using this sort of approach. Again, if you're reading, look, there's obvious verses that are there, but it's funny because some of these verses that use, the pronoun you, especially if you're reading in English, I know many individuals, when they see this you, they say, see, look, Allah's telling me to, go out and speak or do this. I'm like, look, do you know that you is for Rasulullah? That's not for you. It's specifically for Rasulullah. Like, forget the grammar. Like, you can't just take the Quran like that. But I don't want to go off on a complete rant, but what are your thoughts?
I mean, in this comment from an anonymous, to open the Quran and then whatever whatever verse your eyes fall on, you're told to reflect and try to say what it means and how it's telling us something about life. I mean, in a way, I can appreciate that, right? It's like I gave the example before of the Quraysh of Mecca, right? They were non-Muslims, they were getting the Quran, and they were, I mean, told to reflect on it. But I guess at that instance, they weren't really reflecting on the Quran and kind of interpreting or commenting, giving commentary of it or an analysis. It was kind of telling them a reality, and this is what it is, right? It is what it is. But I think, when we open up the Quran, like, if we were to open the Quran right now and I come to a page and I read a verse, I myself personally would still have the humility to say, I don't know what it means. I'm going to read it. I'll read the verse before it, the verse after it, maybe read the whole page to understand the context of that one page. Also recognizing the fact that when the Quran came to Rasulullah, it wasn't page form, right? It wasn't that one page came to the Prophet or that one verse, right? And so even if you read the verse before and after, or the page before and after, you can read it. And I think this is where we have to also kind of differentiate between reading the Quran as an act of ibadat, an act of worship, and then reading the Quran to learn what we can implement, like the verses about akhlaq. And obviously then recognizing there are other ayat which we don't have a right to interpret. For example, the verses about ahkam, which are very small, only a couple hundred. So I wouldn't say that we're not qualified to read and analyze the Quran, but I think, like you said, there will be times where we will want to impose our view on the Quran, right? And there are people who do this. Those people, for example, who lead what they call the alternative lifestyle, the whole alphabet crew, right? And they'll read the story of Nabi Lut, peace be upon him, and they'll say, see, he didn't do what he did to those people because of a particular action, but it was because of something else they were involved with. So they'll take the story of Prophet Lut alayhi salam, a very beautiful story, a beautiful example of him and his methodology of propagation to the deviant community he was working with. But those people today will read those same ayat and they'll justify their alternative lifestyle by looking at certain aspects of the story of Lut alayhi salam. So I think we have to be careful there as a community of believers that we never want to impose our view on the Quran and say, I believe X, Y, and Z, and now I found a verse of the Quran to corroborate what my thought system is or what my ideology is or what I like in life. But again, I think that's a very kind of fine line, because I don't want to also then say that you read the Quran and you don't reflect on how it fits with your lifestyle, right? So there has to be a balance, but there has to be a level where we recognize that we cannot impose our view on the Quran. We want the Quran to speak to us and guide us, but at the same time, we read the Quran and we will understand it in a certain way, I guess, right? But like you said, it may be we're understanding it based on our own blinders, right? What we have experienced in life. But then, as you said, even the great commentators of the Quran for the last 1,000 years, when one commentator of the Quran, let's say, reads the Quran from an irfani perspective or philosophical perspective, it's because that's what they specialized in. That was their love in the seminary, was irfan or philosophy or history or whatever the case may be, right? Or theology. And so every scholar, even the greatest of our commentators of the Quran who have written like multi-volume commentaries, they're going to still even analyze the Quran based on their own perspective to an extent. Maybe they have more of a right because they've developed the tools, but I guess at the end of the day, I mean, nobody can say whatever is in Al-Mizan is 100% the only interpretation of the Quran and nothing else is allowed to be said, right? I think it was actually the late Allama Tabatabai, I might be mistaken, I thought it was him that actually said that every generation should actually have commentators of the Quran, right? Because I mean, the historical narrative of the Quran won't change, but you will find a new refreshing way to understand the ayat, right? Like Imam Ali alayhi salam, when Ibn Abbas asked Amir al-Mu'mineen about the tafsir of the Quran, and Imam Ali alayhi salam replies that zaman, the time, will interpret the Quran. And I think even Imam Rada alayhi salam was asked a hadith about the Quran. Why is it that we read the Quran today next week, next year, and it always seems different or new. And I think Imam Rada alayhi salam was quoted as saying that every time you read the Quran, it's fresh. It's always kind of revitalizing you. It's always growing and developing. It wasn't revealed for one people or one time. As you read it, as the years go by, it becomes, just like a tree. You have a tree that grows in your backyard. And well, maybe not for you in Florida with winter. I don't think you have a winter like we have in Canada. But a lot of our trees in winter, they die, the leaves fall, and then in the spring they grow again, right? So there's this kind of understanding of the Quran that the Quran is always becoming more fresh and rejuvenated every time it's being read, every time it's being commented upon, every time scholars research it. They're always, and that's why you see Allama Tabatabai, may Allah raise his rank. When he completed Al-Mizan in the 70s or 80s, it was 20 volumes. Right, that was his maybe limit, we can say. Today, Ayatul Jawadi Amali, may Allah protect him, I think Tasneem is going to be over 100 volumes, right? 5 times the size of Al-Mizan. Now, it's the same Quran he's commenting on. He's not adding to the Quran because Quran is Quran. So how did he develop 80 more volumes of understanding the Quran than Allama Tabatabai did? Or how did somebody who wrote a 1-volume commentary, how did they go from 1 volume to 20 volumes to 100 volumes? So the Quran is the same Quran, but I think as humanity, our minds develop, we begin to look at things in different ways, right? Just like science, technology, right? Technology is progressing at an infinite rate, right? We have cell phones today, which 20 years ago, we didn't have cell phones, right? But we had all the same physical technology was there, right? The silicone to make it, the glass to make the screen, the plastic was there, the batteries were there. But you couldn't put them all together into a compact phone. Today we have that, right? I think similar with the Quran is that we have always had the same Quran, but as human beings, our minds are developing, progressing. We know that the hadith tells us in the 12th Imam's Duhur, right? Like what we have today is like 1/25th of knowledge. And the time the 12th Imam makes his advent, he will complete knowledge for humanity. Maybe that means we'll have such a level of understanding of the Quran that Allama Tabatabai didn't have, that Ayatollah Jawadi didn't have, that other scholars didn't have, but it's the same Quran that they'll still be commenting upon.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I like how you tried to explain, and it's clear that obviously the Quran is trying to obviously be this hudan lil nas lil muttaqin. It's addressing all these various different demographics. So it's not trying to shut everybody off saying, look, you'll never get to it. It's way too high level for you. Like, okay, it is open to everybody. But at the same time, especially as we've seen in recent times, that sort of subjective reading using one's own personal lens with all these, movements and isms that exist right now, it can be a very dangerous thing. And, as you, nicely highlighted for us too, one of the benefits of the Quran is its eternal nature, that look, every single person in any time, any place will be able to benefit from it. And they'll be able to gain these new pieces of wisdom. But yeah, it seems like the extreme side of it is that when that wisdom that they try to get out of it, maybe perhaps wasn't the Quranic or Islamic intention from there, like Allah's intention wasn't that they read in their own personal opinion into the Quran and take it out and say, look, that's how time is right now. Because, it's clear that we do have many of those, I guess those kind of coming full circle to the discussion that we started with, right? We have those sort of 2 extremes, even when it comes to these Quranic discussions, right? One from that, quote unquote, I don't like using these words traditional conservative, but just for ease of explanation, right? Is that they say, look, this is how things were, and the Quran's talking about that, and then just stop there. Pretty much very, limiting almost only to the historical context of the Quran, right? This is how the Jahil Arabs were, the Quraysh were, and that's all we need. Then you have others who say, look, throw all of that away. This is what we're dealing with right now. Look at the world. We've progressed, right? We're in this evolution, as some like to say. So that's how we need to read the Quran in, right? Toss out the old, out with the old, in with the new. So that's the way that the Quran is explaining and working along with mankind's evolution and our changes in this and that. But it does seem like both of these seem to be missing out, that the Quran itself, as Allama and many others famously tried to explain, that look, let the Quran itself help illuminate the Quran, right? Bil ayat, as many have tried to use that method for their tafsir. Although obviously we know that Quran bil hadith is still a respectable way of approaching it as well. But this is one of the sort of crowning achievements, because as you remember, right, in Al-Mizan, this is one of the things that Allama tried his best to say, that look, we can bring in any other ideology, whether it's irfan or philosophy or modern strict empiricism and science, even kalam and theology. But it'll be most of those individuals just looking for their own presumptions and assumptions within the Quran and trying to take that back out. Whereas if we just let the Quran speak, through itself, then we should be able to, get that message. But, I can understand that's a different, very difficult endeavor. It's interesting for me. I guess I don't know how close of an analogy it'll be, but I don't know. Are you a big movie guy?
I used to be. I don't have much time, unfortunately, anymore. But I try to get every now and then,
Yeah. So you're there publishing all these videos and writing all these books. I'm sitting here watching the 4-hour Snyder cut of Justice League and things like that. So we can tell who has different priorities apparently. So when I'm a big movie person, especially like superhero movies, Marvel, DC, stuff like that, and a lot of these philosophical movies. And I like. The term that I kind of coined for it is like movie tafsir. Like I enjoy that a lot, right? Matrix, Inception, especially Christopher Nolan movies, right? I really enjoy that. So I think that's a big thing on YouTube right now too, of people commenting and explaining some of these things. Mm-hmm. So, it almost in a sense reminds you of the Quran. Like if I watch so-and-so movie, I can get my own understanding out of it. Say, look, see, this movie is really reminding me about XYZ. I think that's what the author's going after. But it's really a sort of subjective kind of reading of what that movie is, rather than saying, what did the director, the author, what do they actually intend from this scene? What, ideas did they actually have going through? That's a much, much different approach. So I think it can make sense where somebody could read the Quran, read an ayah, where even if it's specifically explaining a directive to the Prophet, right, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, of course, if we're approaching it properly, we don't want to say that, yes, this is what the Quran is saying. You could say, look, this reminds me, or this makes me think about what happened in my life, right? Kind of using the Quran as a springboard for something else without fully attributing it to the Quran itself. Maybe that might be a kind of middle ground to maybe approaching it, something like that, right? It made me think of this. It helped me focus on this. Now maybe I can go back to the Quran to feel, how should I actually think about the issue, or how should I maybe do that, rather than having the source and of the solution actually be myself as well, perhaps, right? I don't know if that sounds like a good middle ground. I don't know if the analogy even makes sense at all. Your silence means it doesn't make sense, I think. That's okay. It doesn't have to make sense.
Maybe I need to watch more movies to be able to actually understand the analogy fully. Maybe off the air we'll have to kind of share like movie tips and names of things I should start to watch.
Inshallah. All right, next session, that's what we're going to do. So I know we are about 13 minutes over time. So there are a few other questions. So I don't know what kind of time constraints you're on. I know that obviously, we're on the same coast. So if it's late for me, it's late for you. But if you have to go, you have to go. That's okay.
I actually have every Saturday, Sunday, I do tafsir of Quran live for my community in Vancouver. So I'm actually supposed to start in 2 minutes. I'm doing Surah Al-Muzammil right now. So,
so that means we should have ended 13 minutes ago. So let me quickly apologize and apologize to those who have these questions left on Slido. Maybe we can ask, this quick one is, where is Sheikh Saleem's virtual background from?
The virtual background that you see behind here, Google Images.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hasan.
Google Images. Yeah. Basically, you just Google I think I just Googled mihrab, right? And the background mihrab, and you find some beautiful images. Probably either Google or Pinterest, or a combination of the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wrap up again. Apologies for going over time, Sheikh. But for all of your students, you can blame it on me if you want. That's okay. It's no problem. So may Allah, grant you more tawfiq to help us have a better relationship with the Quran. May Allah grant us all the tawfiq to have a stronger relationship with the Quran, especially in this coming month of Ramadan. May Allah accept all of our a'mal. Any other parting words, du'as, anything for us, Sheikh?
Just with Ramadan just around the corner, a couple of days away, and we're all going to be engaged in the month of Ramadan in different ways. I would say that being the COVID time, and our centers are open. I think some of them in North America, limited attendance. I would say just make the most of the time that we have available, especially if you're in a part of North America which is in a very strict lockdown. As depressing as it may be for some of us, just think of it as a blessing from Allah that you get to spend time more alone at home with your family, with your loved ones, with the Quran. You're not going to have to rush to get to work. You hopefully do virtual work virtual school for the kids. So really take this opportunity this Ramadan, maximize the days and nights, the hours involved in as much as you can do, right? And not just the ritual. Again, keep the ritual, please, especially in our communities. That gives us that semblance of normalcy in our lives, but try to transcend and really make the Quran a part of our lives. Read the translation. If you don't know the Arabic, try to find lectures online in Ramadan, commentaries that are available in print or in video, audio format. Even just a topic that interests you, because obviously the Quran, as you give the example, is an ocean. Some people, they go to the ocean and they might just walk on the beach. Some people will get, the seashells. So really look for what you're interested in. If you're interested in history, then read the Quran from the history perspective. If you're into Islamic ethics and morality, try and gear towards ayat that are geared towards morality. If you want to learn more about Prophet, Jesus alayhi salam, then try and find resources online that will give you everything about that topic. So I think rather than looking at the Quran as this massive ocean, is kind of narrow down and find what really interests you and what really piques your curiosity and get you closer to Allah, and focus on that in this Ramadan. And God willing, with the right intention and the effort, because we all have to put effort in everything in life, and Quran is no exception. But if we make the effort, Allah has promised that He will come to our aid and assistance, and help us on that journey to understand His book and to understand Him ultimately.
Ahsantum. Jazakallah khair. Those are wonderful words. Although I said, final parting words, you give a parting khutbah basically. So now the delay that's happening for your other session, I'll take some of the blame, but now the rest of the blame's on you because.
Yeah. Well, we took 10 minutes just debating what was in your drink, right? So.
Okay, that was my.
Next time, keep it simple. Just chai and maybe some milk and honey, and then we're good to go,
Okay, well, we can debate that next time. Thank you once again, Sheikh, for enlightening us with this. Again, may Allah bless you and your family and all your teachers. And may Allah give us the tawfiq to benefit from all the work that you have done and give you more tawfiq to continue this work. Thank you, everybody who's tuned in tonight, for your questions, for participating in the poll. We look forward to seeing you this Ramadan, or those who will be in person or virtually, and for all the sessions that we will have. So anybody who's listening from Sheikh Saleem's community, Assalamu alaikum, khudafis, and tamas dua to all of you. And for everybody in Orlando, Assalamu alaikum, khudafis, and tamas dua. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much, Sheikh. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.